Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Gurminder Rawal from India. Namaste, everyone out there. Today, I'm feeling excited and thrilled to be a part of online prosperity show and thankful to Prosper Tarubinga for giving me this opportunity. This is going to be a very reflective and thoughtful discussion wherein I'm going to discuss about who am I, why am I, and what motivated me to be a life coach. And especially, I'm going to talk about my tiny mentors, honeybees, being a honeybee specialist, beginning my journey from honeybees, and eventually learning with human psychology, human psych, and how we can make small shift like my mentors into our mindset to lead a beautiful life. So this is all we are going to discuss today in Prosper's show. And again, feeling excited to go ahead with the show.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your go-to destination for transformative conversations that inspire success and well-being. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into the fascinating journey of Dr. Gurminder Rawal, who's a behavioral expert whose path from studying honeybees to guiding human transformation is as unique as it is enlightening. Now, Doctor, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, Prosper, and namaste from India. I'm an Indian, so my trademark is namaste. So I'm Dr. Gurminder Rawal, your guest today. And first of all, I would like to thank Prosper for giving me this opportunity to connect with the wider world so that I'm able to share my thoughts with them, what I have been doing, my journey, and what was my inspiration, how my everyday journey is shaped by who the people are instrumental in making me who I am today. So once again, thank you, Prosper, for having me on your this tremendous show, Live Long Digital.
Oh, thank you so much. Namaste to you too.
Namaste.
We've been connected for quite a while, and I've been in awe of your work. And for those that are not quite familiar with your work, I'm just gonna say, I want you to imagine starting your career, first of all, having to observe the intricate behaviors of honeybees, and then eventually applying these insights to help human beings navigate the complexities of life. And that's what Dr. Rawal's evolution started from, being in entomology to emotional wellness coaching. And this exemplifies the power of adaptability and continuous learning. But as we will discover, human beings and honeybees all have similarities, of which Dr. Gurminder will be able to elaborate, and how we can actually use some of these insights to do and have happier existence. So we are going to follow her journey from the hive to human behavior, and how Dr. Rawal's early studies now inform her current practices. We're also going to be exploring what Mantrana is, and Mantrana Consulting, which is her platform that she's promoting overall well-being and happiness. And we're also going to be hearing some of the stories and results that she has come across, especially people who have found clarity and purpose through her guidance. And obviously from this, how often do you get somebody who's got experience with the honeybee and also experience, with the human being? And so we're going to be getting practical tools, techniques that we can actually apply in our own everyday life for personal growth. Okay, so I'm really excited about this. I think you can actually hear me buzzing, with the joy.
You might
And
be having plenty of honeybees in Australia. We don't have much now in India,
right, right.
ironically, but because my research was closely associated with the scientists in Australia and Germany, so I am aware that Australia is a place where bees love to, thrive well.
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about how you got started. Obviously, you were studying entomology, and now you are into well-being and helping other people, with emotional wellness. Just start us from the beginning of how your journey started.
So my journey, as I put always in front of everybody or in my write-ups also, I call it as a roller coaster ride. It has been like many stops, many ups, many downs. So my career journey started as a forensic scientist. Before that, I was a honeybee specialist. I did my MSc and PhD research in honeybee behavior. I was always interested in studying human behavior since my college days. And as luck would have it, I didn't join medicine, but I became a zoologist, wherein I got the opportunity to be an entomologist. I was very scared of the very sight of blood, actually. So that prevented me from entering medicine. I couldn't stand blood, so I preferred to keep studying, not go to the operation theater. So here I was studying these tiny creatures which didn't have that red blood to deter me. So I started my journey with them, and I would say they are kind of my mentors. The biggest learning I learned from honeybees is the altruism, their ability to sacrifice their lives for the sake of their colony. So each worker bee, whosoever will sting me, is eventually going to lose her life protecting her family. That is something which I learned from honeybees, that if you want to help your family, your society, this is the ultimate you can do. And I was further fascinated to know that people in our armed forces are always taught this lesson of altruism inspired from honeybees. And I was a honeybee specialist. So my intrigue into human behavior got further, heightened. And eventually I was picked by Forensic Sciences Lab Madhuban, where I started learning about the other side of human behavior. What makes people go to the other extent of harming others, or their selfish interests, their self defense, or so many other factors which make them go to the other side of behavior, where we don't think twice before harming anybody. So here I was into that the other zone of human psyche. Earlier I was studying on the positive side of human psyche. Here I was onto the dreaded side of human psyche. So I got married while being a scientist, and as luck would have it, my family situations, because my husband had a touring job and eventually he was sent on a foreign assignment. I accompanied him along with my kid to Bhutan. We were in Bhutan for nearly 3 years, and I left my forensic sciences job there. When we returned to India, and now with two very little kids, I thought education is the best field for me to serve. And I always like being with young people, because I don't know from where it was in my mind. I used to talk to young people at length about everything, kind of guiding them, kind of mentoring them. So I became a biology educator in army schools, Army School Jaipur, Army School Jammu, and eventually we came to Gurugram. So number of years I was teaching grades 10 to 12 biology. So while being an educator, I realized, despite being a good teacher, I was able to connect with my student to some other levels. I don't know from where they could have so much of confidence in me that they started sharing their innermost pains. The things which they were not able to share with anybody, they used to share with me. They used to confide their innermost feelings with me. And I was liking it that if I'm in a position to help them, sometimes there were big issues between the students of mine and their parents. And I found it so satisfying and fulfilling when I was able to act like a bridge connecting both the sides. And eventually, COVID happened. There was no personal connect with my students. I was just meeting them online. Now I was starting to feel a void, the absence of that personal touch with my students, which was making me that I'm not able to help them better. And slowly, I realized that I'm just on an autopilot. I'm making papers without opening the book. I'm teaching my students online or offline without, again, opening or looking into the book or any manual for that matter. Everything is here. So it is kind of saturation point for me. And there is this vacuum which is telling me I have to be connected with these youngsters. But how? This how led me to think something better, in a better capacity, to add to their happiness, to help them paint their life canvas beautiful, colorful. So I started exploring, and during this exploration, my first step was doing a course of a life full of happiness, which he calls, my mentor, Raj. He calls it Aloha with Coursera. So it was an eye-opening course for me. And from Coursera, I thought of first putting my papers. I put my papers from the school and starting searching. And eventually I found Vikram Dhar, an NLP practitioner of world repute. He is my mentor. I enrolled myself with him for my NLP learning. So he trained me both offline and online. I did it twice with him. So he trained me to be an NLP practitioner, emotional intelligence coach, hypnotic expert, and so many other. Like I'm into behavior, I'm into corporate training. So all these things were inculcated into me by my mentor Vikram Dhar. And next step was getting certification from the highest authority in coaching in the world, International Coaching Federation. So I did that also. So now I am ICF ACC and NLP practitioner.
Absolutely, and congratulations. And I think
Thank
that's
you.
that's the reason why, we came across each other, because you're always seeking, you're always learning, and always finding, better ways to do things. But let's just go back a little bit there, Dr.
Yeah.
Gurminder. You actually performed what the honeybees do, which is altruism,
Yeah.
where you left a very successful career of your own so you could be with your family and things of that nature. Now, at that moment when that was happening, was that just because it had to happen, obviously because you were married, or you kind of, had, thought that this has run its course?
No. So when I was in FSL, I was 100% dedicated to my work. So when I had my kid, so to put it straight, I was kind of getting drifted a little from my work. I had to take care of my young daughter. Also, there came a point when being very upright in that kind of a field was threatening my child. So I willfully, without asking anybody, I willfully put my papers that I want to take care of my kid first. For my work, I cannot be putting her life at risk. So that was the sole factor, which one day I was sitting in my lab and there was somebody who was sitting opposite me and he was saying this statement. Now we'll see how she doesn't listen to what we want her to do because she has landed back with a young daughter. And that was the ultimate thing which made me decide at that very moment, this is the last day for me. I cannot risk for my things my daughter's life. She's only 6 months old. So
Yeah.
I mean, no regret, nothing. It was again forward looking approach that I have to look for something more substantial, something more satisfying, which in some other capacity to return back to society, to help people lead a better life. FSL was also a mission to help people. This was another thought in my mind that I will be coming back to society in some other capacity.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
you actually did that, with Mantrana Consulting, and I'm really excited about that. Now, just back again to, your entomology days. What was a typical day like? Just give us an example of what you would do
Oh,
throughout.
it was kind of, it was a very long day. So, because I had to collect honeybees early in the morning. So, when we are going to honeybees in this kind of a bright sunny afternoon, they are going to kill me
Oh,
because they are highly active. We can't touch even their hive. So, I had to, there were two kinds of researches I did. One was to study their behavior, how they are building their colony, what kind of food is important to them. So 2 years I work on this topic, and I used to sit throughout the day in bright sunny outfields. Made me turn absolutely black for a while because of suntan, right? That was where I was learning how to, what kind of food should I provide these bees that they can increase their colony strength. I started with only 7 hives, and when I finished my research, it was more than 30 hives with supers. We had only basic hive, but I had 30 hives with supers, two supers. So we had grown their colony strength to lakhs. Each colony had lakhs of bees at that point in time. And in my PhD, I used to have one full hive day every week or maybe every 3 days back into lab. I had to cut full hive, put it into the box and bring it into the lab, then take it batch wise honeybees, because here I was studying the effect of commonly used pesticides across the globe on the brain activity of acetylcholinesterase is an enzyme which helps in nerve transmission. That is there in us also, since we are consuming all those pesticides indirectly. So I was working on the brain activity, how it affects the brain activity, all the pesticides from different categories. So it lasted for 3 years. This, my typical day used to begin at 5:30 in the morning, and I used to return home by maybe 8, 8:30 or 9, depending upon the kind of results and observations I'm taking. So it was a long day, but I enjoyed it.
absolutely. And
I
I'm
mean,
also
it was never a day I felt like, oh, it's 0 degree outside, or maybe it's 50 outside and I won't go. I used to enjoy that work. So maybe inherently I was a scientist only.
absolutely. But obviously,
Yeah.
those timelines are not conducive to, raising a baby and having a family and things of that
So that
nature.
time I was not married, Prosper. So I
Absolutely.
was only a daughter, and my parents were taking care of me.
Fantastic. Now,
Yeah.
also for the people that are listening, we've heard, so many people saying, the bees are getting lesser and lesser in the environment and things like that. So I have, a couple of things that I want us to look at there before we actually move on. First of all, how important are bees in our lives as human beings? Because you were talking about looking at the pesticide type things and the transmission of that sort of connection. But in essence, how important are bees in our very existence?
So, Prosper, bees have been the biggest pollinators of most of our crops. So, any depletion and decline in the number of honeybees is reducing the number of pollinators. This is a result of mindless usage of pesticides, one, and then industrialization, which is cutting the trees, and we are just removing all the fields from across the globe for different purposes, because population is growing, requirements are growing daily basis, so we need space for their shelter, for their homes, for industry, for roads, for all kinds of infrastructure things. But we haven't put significant effort, or maybe brainstorming on reforestation, afforestation, maybe at some other place, so that these little creatures, they have home to thrive. Since they are declining, you might have read every day there are number of news or maybe articles published here and there that crop yield is decreasing and we are resorting to hormone therapy or maybe applying more chemicals into the soil to increase the crop set or crop yield, which again is adding into our bloodstream only. Biomagnification is happening. First, it was pesticides only. Now we are adding chemicals into the soil to increase the productivity. Pesticides were to protect them from pests, from insects, from other kinds of damages which can be decreasing the crop yield. Now we have reduced the pollinator, crop yield has already gone far less. It is unable to meet the requirements of ever increasing population. So we are adding double the quantum of chemicals. So any decrease in pollinator number, especially honeybees number, as Einstein had put way back, the world is going to end in 7 days or maybe 10 days if there is no honeybee on the planet. Because that is their role in increasing the crop yield and pollinating our crops.
Absolutely.
So that was the first leg of my research wherein I worked what kind of plants should be grown in this particular area where I was researching so that we get increased number of honeybees. That is what I did in my MSc, from 7 to more than 30. The number of hives with super. So we were able to establish what kind of food should be provided to bees. But right now there is no this kind of thinking.
Yeah, because from everything that I study and read and understand, we are actually facing an international decline in the
Yes.
honeybee, and that is just going to start affecting humans. And like you said, Einstein said the world won't go past day number 7 if the last bee drops. So
Yeah.
it's just the way that, you know, we've created the environment. But obviously you left that now. But, you know, were you not scared working with bees? I mean, you didn't like blood in and of itself, but if bees sting, it's a whole different concept in and of itself.
So, yes, first day when I was told that I will be joining honeybees as a stream for research, I got a little scared because as a kid, I was always scared of honeybee biting. I had 2, 3 sting memories, so a bit of scare. But when I was told that I'll be wearing a protective gearing and then I go to field, I was okay. And once I was into the field, I knew they are crawling onto my body. So whenever I was on the field, the thing which was more predominantly dominating my thought process was what I'm going to get out of this and how I can help people with this research. So that time, that stings or everything was not bothering me too much. Of course, I had to face the consequences. I had to give a halt to my research for 3 months because I was bitten so badly by honeybees that I was put on certain medicines. But that's okay. That was not a deterrent because the aim was bigger. I wanted to grow the number of honeybees for the farming community. And same happened in PhD research. I was under the impact of pesticide, which pesticides I used to give to the honeybees. I inhaled the vapors. Once again, I faced that challenge of reaction into my body. Again, a halt. But the aim again in my mind was bigger, that if I am able to establish that these particular pesticides are harmful even for my or everybody else's consumption, they should be banned. Across the globe, they should be banned. They are organochlorines and organophosphates. They are still being used. But I had conclusively proved there that they should be stopped with immediate effect. And so the mission was bigger. So my pain was very small in front of that mission.
Another example of your altruism, which basically now we've got 2 of those mentioned. So when you then came back, you decided you wanted to work with kids, and obviously that was the birth of Mantrana Consulting. So, you know, you're now helping other people promote overall well-being and happiness. How did you come to that conclusion?
So when I started my coaching journey, in January 2023 precisely. So the first thought was, I'm a Sikh by birth. So I have been going to Gurdwara since a small kid. I know we have to return to society. That is what is in our culture. So the first thing I started when I came back from my training, I went to Gurdwara Wellness Center and I requested them to let me sit here to help people. And they were gracious enough. They allowed me to sit here in the capacity of a life coach. Never ever in a Gurdwara there was a provision of a life coach. But they allowed me, and since then I have been a active volunteer in the Gurdwara Wellness Center, where I have been meeting patients from an age of 9 years to 77 years. And I've been able to help them get out of their pains, their anxieties, their stresses. Because if I am having an auntie of 77 years sitting in front of me, she might be having different challenges. But I wanted to help her, and I'm happy to share with you that more than 90% of my patients in Gurdwara, they have had this positive feedback that their problems have been sorted. And same was this child of 9 years. She was struggling with communication issues with parents. These days teenagers have a huge issue with the parents of being judged, being labeled. And that is something which I realized being an educator. And I knew both if I am a mother, I can never be against my children. And I know for sure my children are also not against me. But there is some mental blockade in their mind which is preventing them sharing their innermost pains with me. Maybe they are fearful of what will I think, whether they don't want to do it. So this is a judgment on their intent. Or sometimes we label, okay, you are being lazy, you are being like you want to run away from the situation. This is a label which I observed all my students used to share. So I wanted to act like a bridge between these parents and children so that they are able to hold hands and move together towards their happier future. Because all that was missing was a communication, proper communication. Miscommunication was leading. So I can share a classic example. I had a client, she was in 8th, her mother brought her to me, and she shared her daughter and her husband, they are not on talking terms for years, proper talking terms like a daughter and father for years now. And that was day number 48 when they were not even saying good morning and good night even to each other. And the mother was deeply paid. That was kind of surprise for me. I had separate discussion with the daughter, and she had plenty of things to share about her papa, wherein everything eventually reached being judged by the father or being labeled by the father, like being lazy, being not interested. And these were something which were so important, and it became a mental block in the mind of the child. And she believed that I will not talk to my father ever because he is dead against me. And here was my role to meet the father, make some mindset shift in his thought process, meet the daughter, create some mindset shift in her mindset, and now they are enjoying their holidays and their dinners and their lunches together. They keep updating me. Okay, I keep checking with my clients regularly. So whenever I check, I get that response. And you will be surprised. Last year, the girl comes to me. I said, why you are here again? Any challenge? She says, no. You have to help my mother because now she is in stress. So see how can I forget this kind of an experience? That child realizes that because of communication issues my mother is facing with somebody, please help her also out of that mess.
So what do you think is the common cause of this sort of miscommunication? Would it be a cultural backbone? Because I would understand in my culture, our parents have a certain expectation of their children. And if that doesn't match what they think or how they expect, they usually create some really long-term, resentment that maybe the father has sacrificed, taken them to school or done certain things for them, put them clothes and things like that. And now they are expecting some sort of return from that sacrifice that they did. And if they don't start seeing it within their kids, it just creates that sort of animosity around them. So is this the same sort of approach that you're finding, or would that be something different?
Most of the time it's the same. Sometimes parents feel that we were not able to accomplish that because of so many reasons, XYZ reasons. Now we have the ability to provide, we want our children to accomplish that. That is my lens. I couldn't do X. I want, if my child wants to do X, these are the resources I am providing. But is my child interested? This is the first question. So we have been brought up in kind of, I am not sure about the whole globe. I'm talking about Asian continent. The parents, they most of the time, they, because they are taking care of their children for a longer period of life, so they feel that they are mature enough, they know so many things better, and that maturity gives them wisdom, so they will be deciding for their children. And when I talk about our age children, we used to follow our parents, keeping in mind their pains, their this thing, and their wisdom, we used to follow. But here I have a question to every parent. Were you able to accomplish everything you wanted? If not, you had that thing in your heart that my parent did not let me, or they didn't ask. When I see today's generation, they are very transparent children. We were not that transparent. We used to keep in heart. Okay, fine, they are not allowing me, but I will share a story. I have a client with an age of 69 years. He is visiting me for the last 2 years. Till date, he is a retired person. He retired as a class 1 officer. Till date, whenever he comes to me, he says, my life has been ruined by my father's decisions. He wanted me to be an engineer even now. And I said, okay, you became an engineer. I wanted to play piano. I said, what stopped you? I was fearful of my father, but you were an engineer and you were a class 1 officer. No, throughout my life, I was scared of my father. So this resentment is actually his own inability to take the action, take ownership of his decisions. So put on father. But this generation is, I find this generation very beautiful, Prosper. They cannot take the baggage to next 30 years. They will tell right now, this is what I want. If you are in agreement, very good. If you are not, still I want to do this. They don't want to carry any baggage, and I find nothing wrong in it.
Absolutely.
But this is a huge generational gap and shift in thought process, because they have been born in an age which is high tech, very fast, and very transparent. And now when we talk about the social fabric, moral fabric, that has taken a little backseat. While when we were growing up, it was on the driver's seat. So things have changed. Their lens has changed. So we parents also need to change. That is what I always reach out to the parents. Your kid is not wrong, not against you, not a rebellion. It's, you have to wear the same color lens. That's it.
I like that.
Just see through their eyes. They are telling you upfront. They don't want to blame you after 20 years for any failure or success. They are right now sharing, this is what I want to do. This is where my heart lies. And why I'm sharing, because this I have exemplified in my life. We are, from me and my husband, my parents, my brother-in-law, sister-in-law, we have a number of doctors in our family and science people in our family. When my daughter was to go to college, she immediately said, I don't want to pursue science. Her school wanted her to pursue science. They pestered her like anything. But we stood by our daughter. She wanted to do economics, and now she will be going to Harvard, pursuing her life passion, passing through the best college of the country, then getting the best placement from the campus, now getting an entry into Harvard. So it's like, when you see through their eyes, it's a win-win situation for all of us. That's what I try to convince the parents.
Congratulations. Now you can put a sticker saying proud parents of a Harvard
No,
daughter.
I think all the parents are proud parents. It's only if these challenges are cleared, both
Mm.
the parties can enjoy together.
See, now you raise a really good point there, where the kids have access to the internet and they have, you know, different reference points, whereas the parents would have maybe, you know, be very enclosed within the cultural norms and that which they know. Um, how are the parents finding this, especially when you then confront them, and you know, what sort of methodologies are you using for them to come to accept? Because you know what that means now, that will go into marriages, that would go into communication, that would go into certain actions that they would see as contradicting how they would have approached life
Right.
in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I told a little earlier, I have to first make a change in their mindset.
All right.
First, you have to make an entire shift in their perspective, how they are visualizing the things, how they look at the thing in front of them. For that, they have to have that positive mindset. Most of the people I find have some fixed mindset. My
Mm.
first effort always is to lead them toward that growth mindset, to make and convince them and make them understand that growth mindset is always towards your happiness. Fixed mindset is going to be painful for both the parties.
It's a bee sting.
A little of movement from your side, a little of movement from their side. I always try to change the lens of the children, because children are always of the view parents are against every action of ours. They don't want to trust us, they don't want to listen to our things, they don't want to see the things how they are. They have their fixed notions. So to break those mental blocks, NLP has given me beautiful tools wherein we work with reframing. Whatever sentence they say, I just change the narrative of the sentence. The first thing I do with everybody, what if it was like that? It's a big question in their mind. So this what if catches them immediately. Oh, could be this. Now when they say could be this, now this is a breakthrough point for me. A window is opening towards that thought process. So first I reframe, then I use other NLP techniques, perceptible position. I change their position, I change their perceptions. So I keep slowly during discussions only using those techniques, and they are very helpful. Immediately they put them in some other perspective, and they are into reflective mode and ready to move 2 or 10 steps ahead towards their children. Even in relationships, when I coach the couples, the biggest challenge between I had a couple married for 15 years with 2 growing up kids, but they were ready to divorce due to certain reasons, financial issues, practical family issues. But when you try to make them communicate in front of you and break certain patterns of communication, because NLP has told us we are primarily 3 type of people: audio, visual, and kinesthetic. So if I am an audio person, I won't be able to understand if somebody is telling me, oh, that was this, that was the color. No, I am an audio person. I have nothing to do with the colors or the visual scenery of the place. Like if I tell you my example, I'm a visual person. When my house was being done, the architect used to tell me, she used to open that file and used to tell me the elevation and this. I told her one day, please, I'm not able to understand this. Give me a 3D, colorful 3D. And once she provided me colorful 3D, the whole struggle going on for 1 month got resolved in 1 week because I was able to understand. I am not a kinesthetic technical people who would understand elevations. So that is what NLP has bestowed me with. This is a biggest tool that if somebody is audio, try to understand their world. If somebody is visual, and when the parents or in relationships, spouses, they understand this, they stop labeling first. And once you stop labeling and judging your other half or your own child, what else do we want in life?
What I like about this is it's similar to a beehive and the time that you would go there, because the bee would crawl into your skin and bite you, but you're trying to save them. You're trying to help them out, but but it wouldn't understand in that particular situation, which then means you have to have a lot of empathy and connection, because for you to then figure out if this person is audio, visual, kinesthetic, like you say, and then be able to then break their pattern, it's something that you need to sort of obviously take the time to cultivate that sort of empathy in your business. Is this an essential practice, and if it is, why is it essential for transformation?
Empathy means that I'm able to understand the pain and position of the person in front. There was a questionnaire from your side which asked me, where I wrote the answer. Sometimes the client is sitting in front of me. They are yet to open up.
Right.
And from their non-verbal communication, if I'm able to make out, and if I'm able to say one sentence, that actually breaks the ice. That makes them understand that, okay, this person is trying to understand me. And they gain a little of confidence that I'm not being judged because I haven't spoken even a word. So in my field, empathy is, I think, one of the most essential ingredients to cook a healthy recipe.
Absolutely. And you got to have the experience that you have gathered from working with inanimate objects. Now you're working with humans, and things like that. Now, with the work that you've been doing, obviously you're connecting families together and bringing people together, and things of that nature. How do you see Mantrana becoming a staple, maybe in the communities that you are in, or in the the way wherever you can reach?
Yeah. So the idea for Mantrana came from, I am associated with, along with Gurudwara, I am associated with an NGO, Bagia. There I am working with children of the age of 16 to 20. And when I joined Bagia, it is around 27 months back. So there was a big challenge. First day I entered the class, it was entirely different space for me. These children are coming from very economically backward strata of society, where the parents are absolute illiterate. They don't have access to any resources, any daily kind of livelihood the parents are earning, and they are surviving on that. Now these children had a very fixed and very hardcore mindset about few things. So initially I used to tell in every class to them, it's a challenge between you and me. Either I am going to prevail, you will be in a happier space, or you will prevail, I'll join some other school. So I met lot of resistance. 6 months they resisted, but I persisted. And I'm so happy to say that I'm still there, and they, whenever they have any pain, they will just pick the phone and call, ma'am, I'm not able to answer. Ma'am, I'm not able to attend this interview confidently. So I just talk to them for 10-15 minutes. And so much so, one of my students has joined the University for Higher Studies. The other one is training for national golfs. He's somebody I have put articles on in Mirajul's name in my LinkedIn as well as on my website. So Mirajul is a classical story. Last February, one day he says, ma'am, I won't be able to play golf. I said, why? Whenever I hit a shot, I look at the people, they make fun of me. So this was a big mental blockade in his head that people are making fun of me. So I needed to work with that mental blockade of him. Again, NLP came to our rescue, reframing and doing all kinds of things. Eventually, he started playing in March, and by next 2-3 months, he was in such a groove that he became state golf champion. Win-win situation for all of us. And this was a trophy for me in front of all other students.
Yeah.
Now they are just believing in what I'm guiding because they feel that I can help them towards a better future. They didn't know how to talk to elders or juniors when I started with them. Now you will not be able to make out they are coming from those kinds of backgrounds. They used to say our parents are our biggest enemies. Now the same children, I have video recordings, same children say our parents are our biggest friends. So this is a huge shift in their thought process. Since they got somebody and they can think like this. So that motivated me to go for Mantrana.
Absolutely. And I think you're literally giving them back to themselves, because can you imagine having grown up in a scenario or community where you can't even address or talk to the elders, the people that are around you? Imagine all that they're missing out on learning or experiencing or discovering, the wisdom that is not being passed through the generations, and, things of that nature. Now, in today's fast-paced world, why is it more important to focus on emotional wellness? Because some people might not see, the reason why this is now a crucial thing, and then maybe you've got a different take to why emotional wellness is now the one thing that we should all focus on.
In this world, Prosper, we are chasing targets, we are chasing deadlines, we are 24 hours into work. And we are forgetting that we are also a machine. Our brain is working 24 hours. And we have made ourselves, our thought process also so mechanized that we have forgotten that we are emotional beings, we are social entities. We need to connect personally with people around us to feel validated. That is the basic need of each and every human, to feel validated, to feel connected, which is missing. And it is putting lot of pressure all the time when we are meeting and chasing targets. All the body parameters are every moment shifting to the max, but we are not mindful of that thing. And emotional intelligence is that when we are mindful of our own emotions and the people we connect with. So, this lack or miss of personal connect has led to people losing their life in the prime of age. People of the age of 26 losing life on the treadmill. People of the age of 30, big stars to name for that, they are just collapsing. Why is cardiac arrest so rampant in such a young age, prime of age, and they are losing to it? Because stress has taken the front seat, the driver's seat, and emotions have been purposefully submerged. There is nobody on this planet, I can vouch for it, Prosper. I have now been into a journey of behavior from insects to humans. We are the best creations when it comes to conscious. If a honeybee without any brain, just with the thought she has to protect her family or her colony, can sacrifice her life, we are always in need and search of that emotional anchorage, but we are not finding time for it and paying very high price for that. And that is where I want to connect everybody to everybody.
Absolutely, because with what the honeybee produces, it's all because of the collective. One honeybee on its own would not be able to, create, the hive in and of itself, or the wax in and of itself, and then the actual honey. And each bee has its own specific job, which we all have our own instructions. You've
Right.
got your own separate instructions than the ones that I have. And if we collaborate and come together, we create something as remarkable as this. Now, if somebody's watching this, Dr. Commander, and is intrigued about your work and maybe wanting to find out how they can maybe be in touch or connect with you, where would they go on the internet?
So they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on Mantrana. There is a Mantrana page also on LinkedIn, and I have my own website with my name only, www.drgurminderrawal.com. So there also I have put Mantrana as a separate part. So much so that if somebody has a very small issue, they can write their question, I'll answer. Maybe the problem gets resolved there itself. You don't have to pay for anything for smaller resolutions. If the problem is big enough, then of course you need to meet. Otherwise, you can get your problems. And I put articles. I have so many WhatsApp messages coming to me. I had a problem, but once I went through this article of yours, my problem has been solved. Thank you, ma'am, for writing that article. That itself gives me a lot of satisfaction. Oh, I am able to contribute to one more life with one article. So that keeps me motivated, that ultimately I want to return something. I think I'm a blessed child of God. He has given me all the blessings of life, best of children, best of husband. So now it's my turn to go back to the society, and if I'm able to make a difference in few lives, maybe a life worth lived, I feel like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you have given your all today, and I really appreciate having you on the conversation. I'll make sure that all those
No,
links.
pleasure is all mine. I mean, it's such a fruitful and reflecting discussion, giving me so many more insights how I can reach out to more people or maybe add to their lives. Because adding to life, snatching and earning for myself is everybody's mission. But
Absolutely.
elevating everybody along with me is something which is my vision. It's not that I'm doing everything as voluntary work. I have started my business, so I will be trying to elevate it also to the next level. But voluntary work will keep on going so that I elevate others also. Maybe tomorrow they give me competition, which is fair enough. And I'm ready for that challenge.
Absolutely. I think it was Zig Ziglar that says, give people what they want, and then you will get that which you want and more. And we've actually gotten to the third altruism that you have. The first one was the sacrifice of your career for your family, and the second one, when you literally, started doing all these travels, and now you're doing it for other people so that they too can, be, do, and have a happier existence. So I can't thank you enough for the work that you are personally doing. And I really hope that we can be able to amplify that message so that others can also be reached and get that emotional well-being happening for themselves.
Yeah, because more the people have the access to Mantrana, maybe more I'm in a position to help them, especially youngsters. I have students who tell simple things like FOMO, fear of missing out, is giving them sleepless nights, making them fail in their exams, and sometimes committing suicides. Oh, here I wanted to share some of my students, three of them, they wanted to commit suicide. And I'm so thankful to God in that manner. I've been able to make such a big mindset shift in their mind that a most precious thing on this planet for you is your life. If you are there, you can win all kinds of odds and all kinds of difficult situations. So now they themselves say, ma'am, we will never lose our lives. We can lose everything but not life. And that is something makes me feel, oh, I have done something.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I hear stories of kids in all these worlds where they only have one chance to
Hmm.
make it right, and it just really is unfortunate that there's kids that still live like that, and having people like yourself by their side, but only if they know of your existence. So hopefully, those that are watching would also maybe just share this video with somebody that you know or people that are in your community, so that this message can reach far and wide, and keep it buzzing, as Dr. Gurminder was once an expert in bees. So just keep the buzz out there, about Mantrana and all the work that she's doing. So I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today.
No,
And
no, it is. I am thankful to you because once you will put on some platform this interview, it's going to maybe reach maybe 10 people, 10 students sitting far off from here. If I'm able to reach out to them, or if they are able to reach out to me, and if I'm able to make even a significant change in their pains,
Absolutely.
that will be the real mantrana with everybody across the globe, because mantrana is only for these youngsters who don't have any place out of
Mm,
fear of judgment and label to
absolutely.
open up and unfold.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this right now, please share this video. Even if it's not for you or for the people that are immediately involved in what Dr. Raul is talking about, but there are certain people out there that might benefit from hearing this message. And if you're also ready to get started on your own journey towards emotional wellness and clarity, please visit Dr. Gamanda's links that are in the show notes. I will be putting all those links so that you can connect with her LinkedIn and both her websites in there. So whether you're seeking individual guidance or just community workshops, Mantrana Consulting offers all the tools and support that can help you thrive. And don't wait for anything. Just share this, connect, and be a part of the change. Bye for now.